Hey, okay. There you go. Hey, y'all. I hope y'all can see me. Let me see if I can get the chat going. Hold on. You know what? Let me just go on and just start talking. I don't know if y'all with me or not, but I'm going to do this anyway. All right. So the last show I started talking about was transition and power. And apparently, a lot of people started hitting that video interview or whatever I was doing up and sharing it on other social media sites, which is cool. I don't mind. I mean, as long as they're giving me some kind of credit. But it blew up on TikTok, and a lot of nice feedback responses. It was really cool. Um, there's a lot of love out there, and there are a lot of people who are showing me love and showing me that they have a little confidence and faith in some of the things I've been talking about. But it's all coming full circle now, and I want to give you all some context. You know what? I really don't want to do this and not have you all here. So I'm over here like freaking out. It shows that I have people listening, but I don't have access to this right now. Okay, well, anyway. So on the other show, I was talking about, a lot of numerology. And when I was talking about the numerology, I recognized that there were a lot of people who came into the chat and they were witnessing me for the first time. And they're probably thinking, what the hell are he talking about with these numbers, right? And, it's kind of unfair to just kind of keep talking about something and not engage in the people who are the newcomers. So I apologize for that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how some of the numerology was used to tell a story, to take us back in time, and to take us back and take us into the future. Um, and how they have been using the numerology as a secondary language, but actually it's the primary language because it's God's language. They wouldn't have a whole chapter called Numbers in the Bible if it wasn't relevant. Um, so tonight's show, I'm calling it the Return of the Empire. And some people understand that meaning the Moorish Empire, the Moorish government, the copper colored people returning to their rightful place and the restoration of the land. When I start talking about Area 51, I'm talking about God's covenant to restore you to Area 51, which is the land, the 50 states plus Washington, D.C. So you understand what 51 means. So that's Area 51. It's also the reason why they're talking about all these aliens all of a sudden. Because why? Because the hybrid is alien to you. You're the one that's indigenous to the land. Everybody else is a foreigner. They don't belong here. And I shouldn't really go there like that because in the future or from here out, we must operate opposite of where we've been the last 400 years. And you really can say damn near the last 4,200 years if you want to go all the way back to the beginning of the Bible and all that. Um, but at least the last 400 years, where we've been operating in hate, war, lies, injustice, and there's another one, but I'm gonna link it all up. Well, the opposite of hate is love, and the opposite of war is peace, and the opposite of lies is truth, and the opposite, freedom. So the opposite of slavery is freedom, and the opposite of injustice is justice. So therefore, we're going into a whole world where we're living in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And that's the 5 civilized tribes. And those 5 civilized tribes are the Owls, the Els, the Bays, the Days, the Alis. And if you want to go more into a tribal mode, now you're talking about the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole. Those are the 5 tribes. So let me get started, because the empire is coming back. And I don't know if you all remember. Okay, let me go back to some of the numerology, because I started talking about 46, and I was saying 46 is a transition in power. And how I derived to the 46 was, like I said, when I was thinking about Genesis 1:26, it says, God said, let us make mankind in our image. Well, mankind, if you hold up, if you're the king, King, and I said that on the other night, that King equals 41. K is 11, I is 9, N is 14, G is 7. So that's 41. And if you hold that up in the mirror, it's going to reflect back as a 14. So if you take 46, which really is the transition in power, it's going to reflect back as a 64. And the 64, as I told you all, means the beast. So I said 41 is the king. The opposite of that, who's the man in the mirror, is that 14, and that represents the white supremacist ideology. And everything in threes. But 14 times 3 is 42. So what's the beast? Well, the beast, BEAST, is B is 2, E is 5, that's 2 and 5 is 7, A is 1, so 1 and 7 is 8, S is 19, T is 20, so 19 and 20 is what? 39 plus 8. Did I get that right? 39 plus 8, is that 47? I might be off. Wait a minute. Beast. 2, 5, 7, 8. And you got S is 19. So that's 27. So I'm talking about 47. So I was wrong. Beast is not 42, it's 47. But still, the beast represents that the year 64. In the year 64, I don't know who's on here that's old enough to remember, but in the year 64, there were nothing but TV shows that represented something that had something to do with the beast or something to deal with witchcraft. And so you had TV shows like Bewitched that came out in 64. Then you had shows like the Addams Family, and then you had the Munsters, right? All that was in 64. Then you also had Gilligan's Island, because if y'all remember in the last show, I said you're dead and lost at sea. Well, it was 7 of them, and they were dead and lost at sea. So what we're dealing with now is a reversal in energy. And how I came up with some of that was, I'm going to show you this. If you take, I don't know if you can see that. That's an H, right? Well, y'all remember when Trump crossed over the street with he had all these people with him, but it was a total of 14 people. And he went over to hold a Bible in front of a church. Well, he crossed over 8th Street. And when you reverse a spell, you turn it upside down and you still have an H, right? So he reversed the Bible upside down, reversing the spells of what was in that Bible, because the Bible was used to control God's people. And, half the Bible, it's crazy if you really read the Bible, because half of it talks about good things and the other half talks about not so good things, really some bad things. So what is it talking about and how is it relating to you, right? So you have to be able to discern, oh, this is relating to me and this is relating to something else. Because how are you going to step into your glory and your streets paved with gold, your land of milk and honey, your promised land? And then he's talking about Armageddon and the last days and all that. Well, if it's so bad, why are you talking about something so good? Well, he's talking about the last days for a group of people to be ruling over you. They're not in charge over you anymore. And this is your turn to now take your rightful place as the heirs to Abraham. And it's crazy because I was looking at that and I was talking about, the August 20th, 2026 date, which is the 407th year of our enslavement. So after 407, you have the 21st of August. So apparently you're going to be, this is 407 years of your enslavement, but you're free the following day. You're free. And it says in the Bible, again, the descendants of Abraham are the heirs to the world. Well, when they assassinated Abraham as in Abraham Lincoln, they did that on April the 15th. They shot him on April the 14th, which is 41 forward and 41 in reverse. But they shot him on April 15th. Well, he died on April 15th at 7:22. And that's when they did that on purpose, because they want you to know that the heirs will then take their rightful place exactly 161 years, 4 months, and 6 days. Well, what's 4 months and 6 days? Ain't that 46? And that's on August the 21st. Because in the Bible says the descendants of Abraham will be the heirs. That's the transition in power. 46 means that, right? So when I saw that, I also saw, and this is part of the reversal, everything in threes. So then you have C. So HC. So what is HC? But C is the third letter. So really it's nothing but this. If you look at it, H, 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 right? And if you count up an H by your numbers, H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, 8, right? So we just came out of that 888 portal, August the 8th of 26. 2 plus 6 is 8. We came out of that portal, which was the ultimate reversal. And now tonight, as I said the night before last, you're going to have a meteor shower, the new moon, and the solar eclipse that began actually in Spain. Well, where is Spain? Right next to Morocco. What is Morocco? That's the Moorish kingdom, right? Well, America is the Moorish Empire. How did I get that? Well, if you got Morocco over in Africa, they have what's called Casablanca. Casa means house, Blanca means white. Well, over in America, you have what's called the White House, reversal of Casablanca, right? And they have a tall obelisk right there in DC, letting you know that that's the empire and Africa is the kingdom. Well, exactly. I'm going to read this because I want to get this right because this is some good information. Because I thought about it, and they did this whole little ritual on May 21st, 1980 to August 21st, 2026. What movie came out on May 21st, 1980? 46 years ago, y'all. The Empire Strikes Back. Y'all know what that is. And they introduced Billy D. Williams, who was born on April the 6th, which is 46, transition in power. The Empire Strikes Back, 46 years from 1980, which is 2026 on August 21st. Now, what was dude's name in the movie? Wasn't it Lando Calrissian or something like that? That's L and that's C. Well, L is 12 and C is 3, right? Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me do this. Because I want to make sure y'all can hear me. Hold on. Hey, can you hear me? That's fine. I'm telling you. But can you see me and hear me? Okay, that's all I need to know. Okay, thank you. All right, bye. Okay, so that was someone let me know that you all can see me and hear me. That's perfect. That's all I need to know. So, next time we'll get this whole chat thing set up. I apologize, but I still want to tell my story. So, Lando Calrissian, right? So that's LC. Well, L is 12, C is 3. That's 1, 2, 3. Well, 41 means KING, and everything in threes, 3 times 41 is what? 1, 2, 3. ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3, right? King of pop. So everything is now reversal. And even in that movie, they kept showing you the H because it was letting you know it's who was his pilot. Wasn't it Han Solo? Hans? And then his real name is Harrison. So all that was a reversal. But they knew, Hollywood knows, the music industry knows. If I want to go deeper, the athletic industry, the NBA, the NFL, all this stuff knows, right? And some of these people have signed NDAs just to keep all this stuff, secret, but they participated in the transitioning of the power with these rituals, okay? So let me say, okay, now I explained the beast. I explained H and the C. And every time you see a reversal, y'all, they do it in politics big time. But they did it with the Cosbys. Think about that. What was that family about? That family was showing you there was a reversal in energy and a reversal in power because the husband was a doctor and the mother was a lawyer, and the children all went to good schools and had a nice home, 2 parents household. Everything just looked gravy, right? But the parents' name was Heathcliff, HC, Huxtable, H, right? And the mother's name was Claire, Huxtable, C and H. Reversals. When did that first come out? I want to say 41 years ago in so many months. It was a reversal. When they were doing The Simpsons, which was the biggest competitor of the Cosby Show, they were showing you then Lisa, L-I-S-A, Lisa Simpson. L is 12, I is 9, that's 21, S is 19, 21 and 19 is 40, and A is 1. That's 41. Then you had Homer. Take the R out. You got home. Home. Right? H is 8. O is 15. That's 23. Then you got M is 13. 23 and 13 is what? 36. And E is 5. 36 and 5 is 41. Then you got Bart. B-A-R-T. B is 2. A is 1. That's 3. R is 18. 3 and 18 is what? Shit. 21. T is 20. 21, 20 is 41. So they were doing rituals with that. Now, I don't know about Marge. I haven't even gotten it, that big blue-haired girl. But that's a whole nother thing, so I'm not going to work with it right now. Okay, so I took these notes. That's why I'm looking down. You had, what's his name? JFK. And he was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963. I just took these notes today, and this was running through my mind. And that would have been exactly 62 years. Watch this, y'all. 8 months and 3 days. Okay? His name, and he was 46 years old. 46 means transition of power. The name of the plane that he was on, where they carried his body on, was called Sam 26,000. Well, ain't 26 the opposite of 62? And I'll get into that. Because see, in Genesis 1:26, it says, God said, let us make mankind in our image. Mankind is, okay, the opposite of God is what? D-O-G. D is 4, O is 15, that's 19, G is 7, that's 26, as in Genesis 1:26. That's your mankind. And I ain't calling mankind dogs, but they did say a dog is man's best friend. So let's go there. And then they said, the name of the plane was Sam. So I just said, if you take whatever and you reflect it up, well, the opposite of 22 is 62. And I said he died 62 years ago, right? And then 8 is infinity and everything in threes. 3 days. 8 months, 3 days. Now, then the name of the plane was Sam. Well, what's the opposite of Sam? Mas. Mas in Spanish is more in English. Okay? This whole country was founded on some rituals, because they said that the founding father was Samuel Adams. Sam was, reverse it, that's Mas. Mas is in Spanish is more in English. Then they said you got Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam, who is the opposite of who? Abraham Lincoln. Everything he wearing is the exact opposite. Abraham's facial hair was black with the black beard and all that, but he had a white beard and a white hair. And instead of the black top hat, and the top hat means wealth, y'all, just like the Monopoly man. He was wearing his top hat that was stripes, red, white, and then the stars. So he represented the corporation, and Abraham represented the American people, right? That's why he's on the $5 bill, because he represented the 5 civilized tribes. And that's why he's on the copper penny, because as I said before, you take a nickel, dime, quarter, add it up, that's 40 cents. But when you add that 1 cent, which is Abraham, and it's copper, and it's facing the right, that's 41. See, when Martin Luther King did that I Have a Dream speech, he did it right there in front of the National Mall, in front of the Lincoln Memorial. There was a reason why. So you had everything in threes. So it was 41, 41, 41. I'll show you what it was. So you had King, which equals 41, and that's Martin Luther King. Then he said dream. D-R-E-A-M. Well, D is 4, R is 8. R is 18. That's 22. Then you have E is 5. That's 27. A is 28. and M is 13. 28 and 13 is 41. So now king, dream, and then who's on that copper colored penny? Do I say nickel, dime, quarter, and plus the penny? 41, that's Abraham. So they did that right in front of the memorial of Abraham, who's sitting on the throne like a king, right? Then the statue of Abraham is 19 feet tall and 19 feet below. As above, so below. But what is 19? 1 is the Alpha, 9 is the Omega. Or you can say AI, because AI is 1, and A is 1, and I is 9. AI. That's why they gave Allen Iverson a statue in front of Philadelphia this past year. Because they know we're in the age of Aquarius, and this is the Alpha and the Omega. And even when I talk on, I was touching on that Philadelphia thing with LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, and ain't that a trip? The night before they said Kobe Bryant died, that's when LeBron James passed him for the 3rd all-time leading scorer, and he did it in Philadelphia. And guess how old they said Kobe was when he supposedly died? 41. And he died in a what? Helicopter, HC. Then you had, and then his daughter named Gigi. That's 7-7. That's 14. It was all a ritual. Then LeBron now goes to Philadelphia at the age of 41, right? So all that's a ritual. And I said God's covenant is to restore you to Area 51. So if you're the king, and 10 means God's promise and God's word. That's for you all, the newcomers. So you add 10 plus 41, that's 51 as an Area 51. That's God's covenant. Now, where did I get that from? Well, they talk about Noah's Ark in the Bible. And Noah's Ark was supposed to be 51, I think they said cubits. I could say feet, but 51 cubits tall and 510 feet across. That's your Area 51, Noah's Ark. But if you break down Noah's Ark, N is 14, A is 141. Transition in power from white supremacy to the king, from 14 to 41, 141. That's what it is, Noah's Ark. So if the Ark of the Covenant is Area 51, that's why Martin Luther King said, you know, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but one day we're going to get to the promised land. Well, you know, Martin Luther King, he did that whole march on Selma. And when he did that whole march on Selma, he went down Highway 411. And Highway 411 takes you right to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Gatlinburg, Tennessee takes you to the mountaintop. He said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. So he went to the top. And if you go to the top of the mountain, you can see 7 states. But if you look to the west, you'll see I-40. And I-40 taking you straight over to the Nile River, which is the Mississippi. Right? So check it out. I told you 40 means a trial period. Noah was on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights. You had, you know, Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. You had Moses misleading his people for 40 years. And then you had 40 years between the death of Martin Luther King and the rise of Barack Obama, right? So that's a trial period. So I-40 was the trial. Where did they say that he got shot down? Memphis, Tennessee, which is right off of what? I-40. And he said, I've seen the promised land, meaning that he saw the land on the other side of that Nile River. I may not get there with you, but on the other side of that Nile River is the ark, as in the Ark of the Covenant. Didn't I say it was Area 51? Well, when you go into Arkansas, guess what? Area code 501 as in Area 51. Can't make that up. And that's the covenant. That's why they call Arkansas the Diamond State. Because that's your wealth. And the reason why they call it the Diamond State because they have a diamond mine. There's only 3 of them in the world, and one is in Arkansas, and it's in a place called Murfreesboro. Well, what is Murfreesboro? Break it up in 3s. Murfreesboro, land of the free Moors. Can't make it up. But he said, I may not get there with you, but one day we're going to get to that promised land. We are there now. And then you had, I know y'all been watching this stuff on the internet. Y'all talk about, what's this boy's name? Young Pharaoh. Well, one king must fall for another to rise. Do young Pharaoh. Y, young is Y. P is Pharaoh. Y is 25. P is 16. 25 and 16 is 41 all day. Then he was wearing a pattern on these fingernails, and everybody was tripping. Like, is something wrong with him? Is he kind of homosexual? I don't know. That ain't my business, right? But he had a pattern of a leopard all on his fingers, right? Well, that ain't nothing but showing you that a leopard, too, can be a king of wherever he is. But there's normally a bigger king like a lion. You know what I mean? So one must fall, another must rise. Then they announced, too, that Russell Westbrook from the NBA retired from the Sacramento Kings. One must fall for another to rise. Russell Westbrook, RW. R is 18. Do it with your fingers, y'all. Don't listen to me. And W is 23. 18 and 23 is 41 all day. And he announced his retirement today. So what you're witnessing is everything must fall for us to rise. And that's why I was excited about coming on here. And because I'm not in the chat, y'all, and I don't have that up, I'm just going to tell you, if y'all can show me some love on this, because this is real valuable information for real. And it's my Cash App is $ all rights reserved. $ all rights reserved. And y'all can hit me up on my email. That's dejurelaw33@gmail.com. DEJURE, the number 33 at Gmail. I do respond to my emails. Some people kind of hit me up a lot. Y'all be mindful of that, because I want to respond to everybody. But watch this. Here's another one. And I was talking about May 21st, 1980 to August 21st, 2026. And I was talking about The Empire Strikes Back. That's the movie. They say it was exactly 46 years and 3 months ago, everything in threes, on August the 21st. I'm telling y'all what's going on. And you can say 555 months ago. All right. So if you're the 5 civilized tribes and everything in threes, ain't that 555? And that's what the so-called white supremacists had control of, was your 555, which is 15. 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 15. But when you reverse it, boom, that's 51. That's in area 51. Everything is being reversed. So when they have your boy, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he took the Fifth Amendment exactly 111 times. Now, 111, if y'all heard me on some previous shows, I started talking about 111 and snake eyes. And that's everything in threes, 111. Well, he took the Fifth Amendment. Well, what's 5 times 111? 555, right? So Dr. Anthony Fauci is DAF, Dr. Anthony Fauci. That's D is 4, A is 1, F is 6. 416, as in Genesis 4, verse 16. Now, what does Genesis 4:16 say? It says Cain had to come from the Lord and go back to the land of Nod, east of Eden. He had to come from the presence of the Lord to return to the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, Cain is everything that hasn't done anything good for you. It's held you back, right? Cain was the first murderer. right? So they said when this land was taken over, it was taken over by murderers and thieves and whatever else you want to call them. Then land of Nod ain't nothing but London. Land of Nod is the acronym is LON. And if you reverse Nod, it's DON as in London. So they got to go back east of Eden. Well, Eden is the Garden of Eden right over here. They've been telling you that. They actually been saying the Garden of Eden is in Florida. Area code 407, and Miami is area code 305. Well, what I just say? Everything in threes, and you got five, as in 305. That's 555. Home to the Seminoles. I'll break that down. Let me break that down. We're going into the 5 tribes now. And like I said, Orlando is area code 407, as in the 407th year of our enslavement. You know, everything about to change. So I said the H and the C means reversal. Well, our people, each one of us who were so-called black leaders, they always had a title of nobility. And they all came along Highway 41 or US Highway 41. And that starts at a place called Copper Harbor. Y'all can look this up. Copper Harbor is C and H. The reversal of C and H is HC. So it covers 8 states. Those 8 states are Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana. Then you got Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida. And each one of your so-called leaders had a title of nobility, and that's where they came from. You had Martin Luther what? King from Georgia. You had the king of pop, Michael Jackson, Indiana. You had the heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali, El Bay Day, with a El Day Bay Ali, right? 5 civilized tribes, or that, but that's what it is. Ali, Kentucky. All this is Highway 41. You can even say Nation of Islam, Chicago, Illinois, 41. You can go into the Godfather. They always had some kind of title, Godfather of Soul, James Brown, Georgia. You could go into Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. You go all the way up into Michigan. Then you can go to whatever with President Barack Obama, Chicago. These were your so-called leaders. But they all came from this 8-state line called Highway 41, Copper Harbor. That's where 95% of the world's copper comes from. 95. With 9 plus 5 is 14. You reverse it, that's 41. All day. They letting you know. CH reverse it. Boom. 41. Now, I want to take another note because I did a few other little things because I want to hit y'all with this. Dang, I did pretty good. I covered all that. So, anyone who's just now joining, if you take the number 10, 10 means God's promise and God's word, and it's also the Roman numeral X. X. And there have been a lot of X's in the sky, and I don't know if y'all have been watching these planes in the sky making all these little designs, but most of them are making X's in the sky. And all they're letting you know is it's the return of Egypt. And the reason why I say it's the return of Egypt, because if you fly over a pyramid and you look down, it's shaped like an X. That's why they're talking about this new X-Men movie coming out. The comic book legend Stan Lee told you that he came up with the whole concept behind Professor X and Magneto. From Professor X was Martin Luther King, and Magneto was Malcolm X. And you can see it. You know, one was like, hey man, I'm gonna be true to my people. That's Malcolm X. And then Martin Luther King was like, well, I want peace and I want to get along with these people. Well, you know, Professor, that's all that was. And now we're going from not having to be so much of let's make friends. Y'all, it's time for them to make friends with us. It's time for them to make peace with us. It's time for them to be right with us. You know, you go into Isaiah 41:10, 41 and 10, God's promise. It talks about you on the right hand side of God, because everything that's on the right is righteous. Everything that's on the left ain't. That's why I was like always wondering why everybody want to jump Democrat when it's facing the left. And it's blue. Well, blue means the law of the sea. That means you're dead and lost at sea and you're in that corporation bull. But when you're in the red, that means you're now respecting the rights in the Constitution. And see, I know I'm going to get some slack on this one because we were all raised and indoctrinated to think like a Democrat, but not even knowing that our people started out as Republicans. And before then, we were part of the Whiggamore party. Whigger who? More. Whigs means those white wigs that they used to have on back in the day. And that was when we were under what's called the Continental Congress. But the Continental Congress was out of Philadelphia, Morris government. So why wouldn't you be true to who you really are? That's going all the way back. That's going all the way back to where the Constitution actually protected you. But we wanted to get away from it. We wanted to assimilate. When we wanted to assimilate, that's when we were doomed. Because we wanted to blend in. Nobody else tried to blend in. Think about it. The Koreans didn't try to blend in. They had their own little businesses. And they kept the wealth in their community. The Hispanic community, they kept their wealth within their community. And all they did was, hey, we all going to live in the same house and then get this business worked up. And we all going to work for that same business. And then you'll be able to buy you another house. And then we'll bring some more relatives in and do it all over again. Well, they figured it out because they believed in generational wealth. You know, we were the ones that were like giving the money away and not thinking about how it's going to recycle. We weren't thinking about how to build our generations. We weren't thinking about, you know, what it's really going to take to survive, what it's going to really take to defeat this system that we're in right now. Fortunately, the Most High is making sure that that time is over. Prophecy had to be fulfilled because, you know, we always wondered why, you know, these NBA players and NFL players who had millions and millions of dollars, some of them have billions of dollars, why weren't they really investing into their communities? Because they alone could have, you know, got this thing back on track. Well, many of them had to sign non-disclosure agreements, and many of them had to sign a waiver of certain rights to be able to, you know, start certain businesses. Because it wasn't time for our people to rise yet. And if you think of it in that context, you'd be like, okay, I get it. And, you know, if you're going to be blessed beyond your wildest dreams, well, you did this. You went through the trial period for 400 years. Thank your ancestors for whatever they had to sacrifice, because they did it for you. And we're at the last generation of, you know, that trial period, and it's finally over with in the next few days or so. And I'm just glad that I can deliver the message. You know, they said Jacob is the one that's loved by God, and Jacob ended up having the birthright. You know, you talk about Esau and Jacob. Boom. Grab that leg, say, no, brother, this is my birthright. You get what I'm saying? So now I want to throw one more thing at you. I was talking about Mount Rushmore when I was last on, and there was a reason why they put George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Theodore Roosevelt, the first three on there, and then on the right, Abraham. So George is the first of the corporation. That's one. Then you had Teddy Roosevelt. He wasn't the next one on there. It was actually Jefferson, but I'm just going in the order that I want to go to tell the story. You had Theodore Roosevelt on there too. He was the 26th president. So that's 126, as in Genesis 126. God says, let us make mankind in our image. So mankind is over there. And then the third president was Thomas Jefferson, everything in threes. So that's mankind over there. So on the right, and I'm doing it again, on the right, you have Abraham. And behind Abraham's head, you have the Constitution. You have the Bill of Rights. And it's locked in a vault right behind his head. Why didn't they put it behind George's head? Why didn't they put it behind the other two heads? Because they knew that that was part of the corporation, and this is part of your rights, and these representing the true indigenous people who have the birthright. Then, like I said, you talk about the H and the C, or the C and the H. Well, they're building a bigger statue that's 10 times as big, that's pointing to those four presidents. And he's called Crazy Horse, CH. They reversing spells, y'all, in a wonderful way. Because it's the return of the empire. And I'm glad to announce it. We're going to be free from this. Real free. I had taken another note or two. Hold on. Oh, I was going to talk about some of the holidays. The very first holiday was actually made when they did the Council of Nicaea. And that was the year 325 AD. That was the very first Juneteenth. That was on June 19th, 325 AD. Right? And that's when 40 authors came together to decide what they're going to have in the Bible. It was 40 authors, but they had to get it from one higher word. So that's 40, and then you got one, the most high, that's 41. Now, exactly 619,000 days later, and I want to say 251 days, 619,251 days later, as in Area 51. In the year, it was Juneteenth of 2021, 20 plus 21 is 41. That's when they announced Juneteenth as a national holiday. 41, 2021. Ain't that something? Then, if you want to go into other holidays even deeper, you go into April Fools. What day is that? 41, April 1st. Why they call it April Fools? Because they would be a fool to think they would ever be king. Because 41 means king, right? Then, 30 days after that, you have May Day, right? Some call it Cinco de Mayo, but you have May Day. And the May Day is a distress signal for help. HELP equals 41. Help, because the kings are taking back over. Then you go into what? I'm not doing all of the holidays. Halloween is a reversal. What day is it on? 10/31. 10th month, 31st day. 10 plus 31 is what? 41. But H is the reversal. So they had to reverse you as the king and make you dead. So do you want the trick or do you want the treat? Because we tricked you into thinking that you're alive, but we made you dead. That's what it's about. Then you go to Christmas. I'm not even thinking about Thanksgiving because that was a whole nother little thing. You go to Christmas. Well, Christ and Mas, break it up in half. They saying Christ was the more, because Mas in Spanish is more in English, right? What are the colors of Christmas? Green and red. And you put that 5-pointed star, like you have on the Moorish flag, on top of that tree, that green tree. The colors are red and green. And on that day, you're giving gifts because you're receiving. See, when everything is turned around, y'all, Moors aren't in debt. Moors are the creditors. So that means you receive, you get gifts. See, they said the 3 kings came to see baby Jesus, or whatever you want to call him, Yahshua. And they brought frankincense, myrrh. Myrrh is another word for what? More, and gold, right? So that's what that was. And they had to follow that star, the 5-pointed star, the northern star. So these holidays were all rituals too. Everything has been about us this entire time. Everything that they do has been about you. Going back to when you went to school, think about it. It was always a system of the D and the J. The D is 4, the J is 10, D 4 and 10 is 14. So when you see stuff like that, normally when you go to court, you're a defendant. That's D. You have to pay a debt. That's D. And they say jurisdiction, judges, jury. Most of the stuff that starts with J ain't nothing good. There's probably only one word that's good with the J. Well, you can say Jesus, but when was that? 400 years ago when they first came up with the J. Like I said, his real name is Joshua. So joy, maybe. You know what I mean? But there's not a lot of great words with the word letter J. But it's D and the J. That's why you had the Department of Justice, all this other stuff. And then going back into what I just said about school, shoot, first thing they taught you was Dick and Jane, D and J. And that was a white supremacy thing that they did. After casting spells on you, after making you dead, after doing all this other stuff they had to do to control, right? And some of us had that intuition that we weren't even supposed to be there. Some of us asked questions like, why are they teaching us this when we know this ain't right? And I know your mom or your dad would sometimes get on you and say, no, you need to learn it. Don't worry about that. Just get an A so you can get out of there. And all that were levels of what's called indoctrination. That's why when you graduate, you have that square cap and gown with the tassel. The square means that these are the levels of indoctrination that you've been into the matrix. The square box, right? Levels of indoctrination. So the higher you go, whether you go high school to college to getting your master's and your doctorate, these are the highest levels of indoctrination. And that's why it's harder for people who really have these degrees to come down to a level of saying this system is wrong. Why? Because if it's working for me, I ain't complaining. Yeah, I'll pay these taxes. Yeah, I'll do this. I'll do all this other stuff. And I'll smile in their face because I got my own office and I got my own clients and I'm doing good in the matrix. But if you start talking about being free from the system, they're going to look at you like you goddamn crazy. They're gonna look at you like you crazy. Like, why are you trying to buck this? Why are you trying to buck that? Well, if you know that God or the Most High didn't intend for it to be this way, of course you're gonna be like, resistant to what, you're gonna be like Nat Turner. You're gonna be like, I ain't trying to be a part of this crap. And that's why the crap ain't really working for you, because you might find yourself in and out of their institutions, and the institutions could be learning institutions or prison institutions, right? And let me give you this, and then I'm going to go on and shut it down for the night. But let me give you this. They start talking about we all came here on slave ships from Africa, which is the biggest lie ever. Because you think about that. Wood boats. You on that boat damn near butt naked going across the Atlantic Ocean. It don't matter what time of year it is. If you go across the Atlantic Ocean, you're going to die of hypothermia. And those shackles are going to freeze. Whether they're around your ankles or on your wrists, they're going to freeze. Then you're defecating on other people. So you got sickness and you got hypothermia, right? On a wood boat. And the wood going across, I've seen that TV show called The Greatest Catch on the Discovery Channel. And those boats have a hard time surviving the Atlantic, and they're trying to catch crab or whatever the hell they're doing. And they're in metal steel boats. And them things can't stay afloat with motors and everything and all kind of safety gadgets. But you talking about some wood and some sails, and here you are rolling, tired, boo-booing, urinating, cold. See, it doesn't make sense to do that from an investor standpoint, because if you're an investor and you're going to lose damn near 90% of what you invested in, and 10% of what you got left is going to be sick and not have no meat on their bones because they're tired, worn out. So why invest in the ones from somewhere else when you can get the ones that are already here? The first prisoners of war were the Powhatan tribe, POW. That's why they got those POW flags at the post office. Powhatan, the Algonquin, the Iroquois. Those were the ones that were first enslaved. They did that in the year 1618. See, what they did was they had to take Pocahontas, which is really Moataka, whatever her name, Moataka, something like that. Y'all can look that up. And I just know the last three initials of her first name is AKA. She was the first AKA. And she was named Pocahontas because her father said, you reminded me of your mother who died when she was a little girl. And her name was Pocahontas. And then, and it wasn't John Smith who got her pregnant. It was a guy named John Rolfe. And they took her back over to Europe, impregnated her. John Rolfe impregnated her. And when he impregnated her and had the baby, then they murdered her after changing her name from, her indigenous name to Rebecca. Murdered her, kept the baby, whose name was now Thomas Rolfe. That's your Uncle Tom, y'all. He's the first Uncle Tom. And the reason why they did it was because she was the heir to that land that you may call the 13 colonies or whatever it is, but she was the heir to the land. And so then once they had the baby, who was now part Caucasian, then they were like, okay, the baby has the birthright, so all they had to do was go kill the chief of the Powhatan, which was her father. They murdered him in the year 1618. Once they got rid of him, then they said, now we can put the rest of these people in captivity in the year 1619. That's where it comes from. August 20th of 1619, they put the Powhatan tribe in captivity, and that's why you see those POW flags at the post office. That's who that was. It's going. Those flags are coming down after August the 20th, because you're not going to be part of that no more. Those flags first went up when COVID-19 first started. Well, you know, in the Bible, Genesis 15:13, it says that we'll be afflicted in the land that's not ours for 400 years. Add 400 to 1619, that's 2019, as in COVID-19. And then those flags start popping up at the post office. Then you know they're going to be up there for 7 years, because 7 means completion. And 46 means a transition in power. What year is it, y'all? 2026. 20 plus 26 is 46. And 7-year mark is going to happen on August 20th. Completion. So when it's over, it's really over. The flag's going to come down. Then Trump is going to have that race in front of the National Mall, you know, with the checkered flags. Because you're at the end of the race. Those are the flags. That's going to make an X. X is 10. 10 is God's promise, God's word. X is Egypt. Because you're in ancient Egypt, y'all. Don't let that fool you either. You know, you talk Africa all day. This is ancient Egypt. You got the Grand Canyon, got the Pyramid of Ra, and got Isis and Osiris. And they found things in that Grand Canyon that, you know, they had mummies and everything in there. And they took that stuff and put it over at the Smithsonian Museum, not wanting you to know what's really going on, and wanted it blocked off. Then you got the pyramids in Wisconsin and Louisiana, right off of Lake Pontchartrain, whatever you call it. Then you have the pyramids in Kentucky and Tennessee and California. You got them all over. You know, Central Park was ancient land, ancestral land. Shoot, down there in Florida was nothing but ancestral land. That's why Disney came down there and named it after, you know, indigenous people. That's how he got the land. And that's why they were able to not have to pay certain taxes and everything else, because they were able to take tribal land and tribal rights and tribal territory and have their own park. That's why they came up with Disney dollars, because they came up with their own commerce. Because when you're free and when you're autonomous, you can do what the hell you want to do. And we're scared to be free and we're scared to be autonomous, but the Most High got us. And he going to make it happen whether you like it or not. Because those 407 years are over with. And shit, today is the 12th. You got 9 more days. Really 8 more days, but I'll say you're free on the 9th. You good. So again, y'all, I'm going to go on and wrap this up. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to participate in the chat tonight. I'm going to get that right next time I go live. I promise you. And thank you for your support. Thank you for hanging with me. I hope that this show was just as good as the first live I did, you know, because I always want to provide information. I always want to give you all something where you can connect these dots and say, oh, that's why it is the way it is. And y'all, thank you for your support. Again, my Cash App is $allrightsreserved, $allrightsreserved. And my email is dejurlaw33@gmail.com. And please subscribe, like, and all that other good stuff too. You know, I've got a lot of newcomers that came on board, and I appreciate that because, you know, the word is getting out. And people are actually cross-referencing what I'm saying. And they're realizing that dude might be actually telling the truth about something. Because he's saying something that maybe we haven't heard before, but the history is there. And if you can put your finger on it on your own, you can't say, I'm talking out the side of my neck. You can only say, Thank you for helping me. So if you want to show me some love for that help, show me some love. Because you can pass this on. Shoot. All you got to do is take the video and share it with people. And watch it over until you get it into your head. Because this is great information. How did I get it? I did tons of research, but it was one of those revelations. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was really reading Genesis 1:26 when I started thinking about God said, let us make mankind. Well, he's kind of like a man. He doesn't have your essence. He doesn't have your soul. He just does, he mimics what you do. He's a reflection in the mirror. That's why Michael Jackson said, I'm talking to the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to make a change. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. He's telling that dude, hey, make a change, man. Time out for all that. But when I realized that's what it was talking about, mankind and a reflection in the mirror, that's when I realized that all this other stuff was opposite too. They reversed everything. That's how I learned it. And then I started going deeper because once I learned that it was all a trick, like I said, trick or treat, what you want, the trick? Once I learned that it was a trick, I had to start reversing how I thought about things. Once I started reversing how I thought about things, it changed me and opened up my eyes. And I said, oh, I can see the world clearly now. Think about this. I'm going to give y'all one and I'm going to let you go. The Powerball and the Mega Millions. 999. Everything in threes. And 9 means the end of something and the beginning of something new. And 80. That's Mega Millions. 80. Infinity. What's God's promise? 10. 10 times 8 is what? 80. So it's 999 and 80. We're at the end of this and we're on to the beginning of something new. They're putting it in your face, y'all. So thank you all. Much love to you. Much respect to you. For those who've been sharing the video and those who've been giving me nothing but great comments and compliments, thank you. All those who are new to it, thank you. I'm going to do another one because I really want to have another follow-up to this one because, you know, after tonight, like I said, with the meteor showers, the new moon, and the new moon is supposed to be turning, that's the sun god returning, y'all, because it's going to be turning orange and yellow as in gold. And it's going to be closer to the earth than ever before. And that's the return of the sun god. Well, who is the sun god? Y'all going to be mad at me, but that's Obama, y'all. And he's coming back as a deity, y'all. I'm not playing with this. And it's about to get good. Now, some of y'all going to be mad because why you got to end the show on Obama? No, just roll with me on this one, okay? Let me have one for the night, and then we'll follow up on it in a few other nights, and we'll go with it. But anyway, thank you. Much love and respect. Good night.